Kyle, Pierre, and Dan. And it's the summer when John Tavares' fight with the CRA is top news, Pierre. Give us the Coles notes for those not following Tavares' tax battle.
Well, John got about a $16 million, give or take a few $100,000 from the Toronto Maple Leafs as a signing bonus. And it sure seems like a lot of people in the National Hockey League, including agents and players, are talking about it, because if this case really does go to court and it goes against John Tavares, it's going to be a very difficult situation for people that own NHL teams or manage NHL teams to go out and get free agents from south of the border.
Pierre, in the ripple effects, we'll get to that in a second. The gist of the case is more or less that both the U.S. and the Canadian side have claimed their right to tax that income. The fight with the CRA currently, he said he already paid the taxes on the American side. But the ripple effects of this, it's not just the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's every Canadian NHL hockey team. It's the Toronto Raptors. It's the Toronto Blue Jays. And looking forward, their ability to potentially have this hurdle now in attracting top talent into this side of the border.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I can't speak to the other sports because I don't know how their collective bargaining agreements work. I don't know how their signing bonus situations work. I don't understand any of that stuff. I can talk about hockey, though. And I know I've talked to a couple agents so far since this news broke in the last couple of days that are very concerned about it. And I understand why they would be. There's 7 teams in the National Hockey League that are on the north side of the border, on the Canadian side of the border. And so if you were to take that pool away potentially for future players that are UFAs, that shrinks the ability for them to bargain as agents against other teams. And I think the biggest thing, it's going to hurt the ability or create a problem for the Canadian teams to have an ability to go out and attract some of those players. So I don't know how this will all play out. I know one thing. John Tavares is not a nefarious human being. I'm telling you right now, I've known John a very long time. He's an amazing salt of the earth person. So I don't understand the tax laws. I'm not even going to try to pretend it, but clearly there's been a malfunction at the junction and they're going to have to figure it out.
And it's a lot of money. It's $8 million. It is. And when you ever hear of a player and taxes, you're like, okay, he's unpaid. No, Tavares paid them. So he's the good guy in this story, because I've never heard of anyone cheering for the CRA.
So, you know what, Dan and Kyle, I look forward to sharing this intel with you. And usually you don't share personal information with people about your tax situation and everything else. I will never forget leaving NBC Sports after we lost the contract and going to work for Eugene Melnyk and the Ottawa Senators. And I had signed for a certain amount of money over a 3 to 4 year period. And I'll never forget my wife calling me when she was moving out of our house in the United States to move into our condominium in Ottawa. And I will never forget saying, I think they made a mistake with your payroll, your income, your tax, or your paycheck. So I said, let me call the office and we'll check. And I called and the lady said, no, that's the correct amount on your check. We deduct 53% at source immediately. My wife was mortified, and she's Francophone Canadian. She had never experienced that in our entire career in the league. And so it takes getting used to. It really does. And that's the part that I don't think people understand. It's not, I know Canadians have to do that, but I don't think people understand. That's not the way it works in the United States.
Well, Pierre, I can only imagine that throughout this whole process and throughout his career, he's had a team of financial advisors taking care of all of this stuff for him. Yeah. I mean, even Dan and I have that, and our signing bonus with Bet Rivers was just a coupon book to Arby's. So we don't actually have to.
Hey, if it's Arby's, I'm in. Arby's, underrated.
I heard you got a 20 coupon book. I only got the 10, but that's fine. I respect what you've done with your career, Dan. Let's move on to players who exist, because honestly, talking about the CRA makes me break out knives, to be perfectly honest. Looking back, I want you to look back at this offseason, Pierre, and just the Gavin McKenna pick, landing first overall, and of course taking Gavin McKenna. How much do you feel in hindsight that actually reshaped whatever the offseason plan may have been for this Toronto Maple Leafs team?
Oh, I think it made them very excited. And I think long-term, it makes them even more excited. You see the creativity, the work habits, the passion to play, the ability to manufacture points. They could probably hide him in the lineup in Toronto. Unlike Connor Bedard when he went to Chicago, they couldn't hide him in the lineup. They're going to be able to hide Gavin McKenna in the lineup just because they've got far more firepower than Chicago had. It's very difficult to be a great young player on a bad to marginal team. Toronto's not a bad and not a marginal team. They're above that standard, especially with the star power they have up front. So I would say that it probably adjusted a lot. It said, okay, we're good here. We're good here. We need to enhance our bottom six forwards. And I thought they were really proactive when it came to enhancing their bottom six forwards. And the fact that they were able to sign Darren Radish, the fact that they were able to trade for Emil Andre, I can go down the line, all the good things they've done. I think their team is way better on paper than it was last year at the start of the year.
Willie Nylander got thrust into the spotlight on Instagram as there was a picture of him lifting some dumbbells shirtless, and Brad Marchand weighed into the comments and said, "Don't hurt yourself with all that weight, Willie." You know, as we age and we watch Marchand in his career, he went from a villain to now I think he's a very lovable, likable player because of what you hear from guys who play with him on Team Canada, his teammates in Boston, his teammates in Florida. He's turned from a villain into we need a comic relief.
I think the last time he really put himself in a bad spot is when he did the licking situation with Ryan Callahan. You know, I did that game, and that was bad, and that was way below where Brad should be. He's a tremendous player. I like him very much. I spent a lot of time with him when I was living and working around Boston for NBC. His son went to the same prep school as my son went to in Boston in Belmont. So again, you get to know people over time. I've known Brad going back to the Super Series in 2007 between Canada and Russia. So that's a long time. And the biggest thing about him is passion to play, gets along well with all his teammates. And I think what we don't say enough about him is who he learned from when it comes to leadership. Learning from Mark Recchi, learning from Zdeno Chara, learning from Patrice Bergeron, learning from all these guys down in Florida that he's been around and win with now, obviously. Brad's a tremendous person, and he has a lot of fun with life, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And he's the last of a dying breed because all the current players are from a hockey factory, and they are told never say the wrong thing.
Yeah. That's true. I like that point that you raised, Dan, because it is true. I remember being at NBC and TSN for so long, and they always just say, make sure the personality of the player comes out. And you try to do that when you interview them, and they're like, no, I'm not doing that.
No.
You know, one of the biggest situations I remember was trying to interview a coach, and the coach said, I'm not doing that interview. And I'm like, how much do you get paid? This is off the air, obviously. And he said, none of your business. I said, you're getting half of that money because of my network. So you're going to do the interview now. And all the players in front of him on the bench were laughing, you know, and eventually he did the interview because we taped it after the second TV timeout of the first period of a home game for that coach. But I'm telling you right now, most of these guys don't want to say very much, and the league can try all they want, but Marchand's a breath of fresh air when it comes to that. No question.
I'd like to talk about one of Brad Marchand's now former teammates, Sergei Bobrovsky. Pierre, looking ahead at this season for the Leafs, what do you think is a realistic expectation for how many games he will start in net for this team?
55 to 60. I believe he still has that in him. And if he can do that, that's like found money. And if he can do it with a winning percentage and a goals against, obviously that's very respectable, and a save percentage that's very respectable, which I believe he will be able to do. That's like huge news for Toronto. And I don't think a lot of people in the league are thinking he's going to backfire or not play well for Toronto. Most of the people I've spoken with that understand, you know, the level that he's at right now really expect him to do very, very well in Toronto this year.
Speaking of goalies, this is a question I asked just because I'm friends with the man and he doesn't have a job right now. Connor Ingram. Yep. Ease my fears for this guy who doesn't have a job right now.
I think there are going to be jobs available eventually for somebody like Connor. Connor's done some really good things in his career, and he's really done a nice job, I think, rehabilitating himself as a person and as a player. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. So I do think he'll eventually find a job. I really believe that. That's the one thing I think we all pay attention to. We think, okay, just because a guy's not signed by X date doesn't mean he's, you know, going to sit out the year. I think eventually there will be openings. Injuries happen. Teams aren't happy with their depth at certain positions. Guys eventually get jobs.
And to that point, Dan, and I don't know if you would want to pass this information along to him. You probably wouldn't, but in fairness, he did end up in Edmonton, which is kind kind of become a goaltending graveyard to a degree. It's
Mhm.
really, no one is coming out of there better than when they went in because of the style of play and of their inability to shore up that defensive line year after year after year, Pierre.
It's
Good
such a
point.
good point. It's such a good point. And Dan and Kyle, I just want to, I'll take you inside for a second. I will never forget doing a game in St. Louis when Todd McClellan was a coach of the St. Louis or of the Edmonton Oilers that night playing against St. Louis. And what I remember is how frustrated he was. And Edmonton got beat pretty good in the game. And he gave me one of these at the end of the game. So I went over behind the wall, behind their bench, and we were talking. And he said, I have so many good players here. And for whatever reason, I can't get them to understand how to play team defense. Now, that's a long time ago. A lot of these good young players were young players at the time, very young. But even then, he could see that these guys were having a hard time grasping how to play team defense. It hasn't changed in Edmonton. It just has not changed. You cannot outscore your problems in the NHL today. You can try, but it won't work.
Pull back the curtain. We're ending the nearing the end of August. Where are players right now in their season preparation?
Probably if you go 100% is when training camp starts. They're probably at around 90 right now. They're getting amped up. I just train a bunch of kids that have all left to go to major junior camp. So those are already started. I had a bunch of kids earlier in the summer that were college players. They've already gone back to school. They're skating at their schools. NHL players are in full throttle camp mode right now. They really are.
Pierre, before we get to what is my favorite game we play here on TSR, as Dan turns around and points at the wall, I want to talk about Morgan Riley. I want to share my own thoughts on him because I think you echo the sentiment, but I'd like to hear yours. It appears as though he's staying with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think that one thing that often this fan base doesn't do very well is forgive and forget. And I think because of his new position on this team, I would love to see the fan base go into that arena this year and just cheer the guy on and just let him wipe the slate clean and let him not have that pressure of the number one defenseman. I don't know if it'll happen because of the way the fan base often is, but is it not fair to say after this kind of terms of service, he does not deserve a clean slate going into this season?
He deserves a clean slate. 100% deserves a clean slate, and his role will change within the confines of the team. I'm just going to throw this out there to Leaf fans. He's a much better player than what you give him credit for. His role is going to change, and I believe that role will enhance his abilities. And it reminds me a lot of Mike Matheson. Mike Matheson was a first-round pick of Florida. They didn't like him there. They moved him to Pitt. He goes to Pittsburgh. They don't like him there. He moves on to Montreal, his hometown. Mike Matheson's role changed over time. He went from being a first power play guy to a second power play guy to not being on the power play. And all of a sudden, Mike Matheson becomes a really good player. Certain players like the power play. Certain players can thrive in the power play. Some guys just can't, and it affects their whole game. I think at this stage of his career, Morgan Riley's one of those guys who doesn't need to be on the power play, and his game will be enhanced. I'm never been in the school, and I know Kyle knows this, Dan. I've never been in the school where I thought he was going to get traded out of Toronto. I think whomever came in there knew we changed this guy's role and his position within the confines of the team. He will be better, and I think he will be better this year for Toronto. I'm really excited for him. I think he's a tremendous person and an outstanding Maple Leaf. I really do.
And he's married to Canadian Olympic royalty. Hey, they could get her to teach power skating. Are all the power skating classes still taught by figure skaters?
Except for the ones that I do.
Okay, we're going middle right. I don't think we've ever gone here. This is 1 degree of Pierre McGuire. He tells his connection to the player that I point to. Jeff Norton?
Oh, what a good story. So first of all, Jeff.
I don't know Jeff Norton, Islanders.
He was a great player out of the University of Michigan, went to Cushing Academy. His father was a tremendous athlete. Jeff was, I would say, one of the most underappreciated players, formerly a draft pick of the New York Islanders, played in a lot of different cities, St. Louis, San Jose. He had some issues away from the ice. Comes from an amazingly gifted athletic family, as I said, with his father. His brother used to produce games that I did at MDC. His brother's one of the legendary UFC producers and travels all over the world now producing UFC fights. Jeff Norton's a tremendous guy and a real good player.
He played close to 800 games in the NHL.
He did.
Well, Jeff Norton. If you're wondering, he played for the Islanders, the Sharks, the Blues, the Oilers, the Lightning, the Panthers, the Sharks, the Penguins, the Panthers, the Bruins.
Yep. I think I touched on a few of those before you said it. And you look at his card and you'd say, look at some of the numbers. They're really good, especially early on in his career. Big physical guy. Kyle would love this player. Big physical guy who could really skate and handle the puck. I'm telling you, Jeff Norton was a really good player. Out of the university, he went to Cushing Academy, but he's out of the University of Michigan.
He is, and he played for the men's Olympic team, the U.S. men's Olympic team in '88.
Yep. So that was a Calgary Olympics, and on that team was Lane McDonald for the U.S. and Scott Fusco, 2 Harvard guys, and you had and Kevin Stevens was on that team out of Boston College. There were a lot of American college players before they actually went to the pros in '98.
Look at you. You seem to know a bit about hockey, Pierre.
Well, you guys make it easy. I have so much fun.
I had to
this.
Google Jeff Norton, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So again, his brother's pretty amazing. They're a legendary hockey family in New England. They're just outside of Boston, and the Nortons are really, really good people, honorable people. Got a lot of time for the Nortons.
Can you name any of the goalies that was on that '88 team for the USA?
Would Mike Richter be one?
John Blue and Mike Richter. Look at you.
Thank you. Now I got to go to sleep. My brain's tired. No, I'm just kidding.
See you, buddy.
You guys are the best. Thank you so much.